You're now watching Sports Bettor's Paradise on the BetRivers Network.
Let's talk some college football with Bruce Marshall with VegasInsider.com, CBSSportsLot.com, and, of course, BamSports.net. Bruce joins us via Switzerland for his submission. Winning week last week, so let's keep it going. Bruce, let's start off in the Commonwealth state. And Louisville, will they be looking ahead to their ACC championship game against undefeated Florida State? Louisville is in the top 10 right now. Kentucky has kind of hit the skids after that soft 5-0 start. Kentucky catching 7 at Louisville.
Yeah, buongiorno, Jimmy. This is, for, Kentucky, a chance to salvage something here, because I think by all accounts, this has been disappointing this year for the Wildcats. Now, the schedule got a lot tougher, and that's when they started to lose some games. But I think Tennessee's the only other team that had Georgia and Alabama both on the schedule this year. So it got a little bit tough for them there. Devin Leary never quite hit stride the way they were hoping in Lexington at quarterback. He's still in there a little bit later in the season. The Tennessee effort was pretty good. But it's been a little bit of a disappointment, I think, for Kentucky, and they can salvage something here. Now, they have been beating Louisville in recent years, and as far as Louisville, the look ahead, you would think they wouldn't against this rival, and like I said, they've been having trouble with Kentucky in recent years, but they've been riding some lightning this year, Jimmy. A lot of close calls. Last week, the most recent against Miami. The defense has played pretty well for the most part, though it leaked some last week. I guess the best win was Notre Dame. And you wonder, though, if you flip the schedules of these two, if Kentucky might not have a chance to be sitting here at 10-1. Perhaps not. But nonetheless, this is a rivalry dog chance to salvage something for Kentucky. They've matched up well with these guys in the past. And listen, Louisville's had a lot of close calls. And you lose a game to Pitt. I still haven't gotten that one out of my mind yet. So I'm taking Kentucky, rivalry dog deluxe. Keep it close. SEC dog this week in a rivalry game. I think I'll give Kentucky a shot to make this very interesting in the Ville.
Yeah, that only blemish on the Louisville record, that field rush fade following week, went up to Pitt and got beat by double digits. Get extra value this football season with BetRivers Squares. You can win up to $10,000 in bonus money. Bet $10 in same-game parlays on any game with the Squares icon to earn a square. That's brought to you by our friends over at BetRivers. That is something. You got the extended holidays sitting around. Great time to get a couple of squares and give you a little extra action while you got a little extra time. Florida and Florida State, both with the backup quarterbacks here. Graham Mertz knocked out late in the third. And, of course, we all know about Jordan Travis being knocked out for Florida State. Florida at the Swamp catching 6.5 against the Noles.
Yeah, and a lot of moving pieces here. I mean, we'll see. Billy Napier, there's some people out there who think he might be in a little bit of trouble here. They need this win to get bowl eligible. We'll see what happens there in Gainesville. You mentioned the quarterback situation there. Rodemaker's played a little bit in the past for Florida State. Came in there last week and got the offense going against North Alabama, though that was a lower tier team. He played a little bit last year as well, so he's got some experience in there. But he's not Travis, and Travis is the guy who's made Florida State really special this season. They've also had a few close calls this year, and this is not an overwhelming team. And now you're taking your potential Heisman candidate out of the lineup. I think this is going to be a little bit tough. Now, of course, you mentioned Mertz being out. We saw Max Brown in there last week not look too bad against Mizzou, and he is a dual threat. He can run some too, and they think that he can handle it there. The stage isn't too big for him, so we will find out. But there's so many different angles here as far as Florida goes, and the necessity, like to get to 6 wins and bowl eligibility and all that. The effort they put forth at Mizzou last week, and I think Mizzou's every bit as good as Louisville, would get them here, if not win the game, even with Max Brown at quarterback. And they've had a few games like that this year where Florida has looked really good, including that one at the Swamp earlier this year against Tennessee. Erratic, inconsistent, but this is a rivalry game. They're getting points at home. Florida State, and boy, this would make Florida's season to knock Florida State off, and they need a nice boost like that in Gainesville. I'm going to take the Gators plus. I would not be surprised if they pull the upset here, even with Max Brown. They think he can be okay this week. I do too. And again, Florida State without Travis, not the same team.
Look, Max Brown had to play about 20 minutes of that game. He was 4 or 5 for 56 yards. 11 yards an attempt. He ran it 7 times for 42 yards, 6 yards an attempt. He's very productive in a big stage at a top 10 venue. So, I mean, he was. I thought Billy Napier kind of took the ball out of his hands when they were in the red zone, settling, kind of, no, played for that field goal, played very conservative to just go up a less than two. Of course, they didn't stop a 4th and 17 on the game-winning field goal drive as well. But no, I think Max Brown is going to be just fine. North Alabama, who the hell knows? When you go and roll up, we can put up some points on them, Brucey, behind with Florida State's supporting cast. All right, Navy won for you last week, Bruce. Looking at this game again, SMU at home against the Middies are 18-point favorites.
Yeah, I mean, there's some history here. I mean, it's interesting. The year 60 years ago, when Navy played Texas for number one in the Cotton Bowl, they did lose a regular season game at SMU that year too. So they've played each other a lot in the past, and many times before they aligned in the same league here. And in recent years, this has been a very difficult matchup for SMU. Now, uh, talk about a look ahead here. SMU might be looking ahead to the AAC championship game next week. Now, I think that they've got to win this one to assure they'll be in there. We've got UTSA and Tulane on the other side there, but they're all three sitting on 0 losses. They don't want to get involved with tiebreakers if they lose this game to Navy. But it's a very awkward opponent. And Navy, even though it is throwing a little bit more this year, it's about, we mentioned this last week. Last year is about 6-1, and that's how it had been running for a few years at Navy. This year it's about 4-1, the run versus pass. They're running the same offense, so just throwing a little bit more out of it. And Arline's given them some decent production at quarterback, but it's not about the offense with Navy. I mean, it's defense. They've had 3 shutouts this year. Yeah, Wagner, Charlotte, and East Carolina, not much there, but still pretty gnarly. UAB couldn't budge these guys a couple weeks ago, and that's Brian Newberry's specialty. It's hand-to-hand combat with these guys. They're like Navy SEALs out there on defense. They fight you, and they will keep. They should be able to keep Navy in the game, and that's going to be important here. I would hate to see Navy fall behind like they did at Temple a few weeks ago when you're down 14-0, 17-0 before you know it. That would not be good. But the option can keep SMU off balance like it has in recent years and chewed some of the clock up. And that defense, like I said, is pretty gnarly. So I'm not sure Preston Stone's going to go wild here this week. I think this is a very tricky spot for SMU. I'll take Navy. By the way, gets bowl eligible with a win. They've still got the Army game coming up, but that's not until like mid-December. So this is one they really, I mean, they if they win this one, they're going to be bowl eligible for sure. I'm not sure they get there, but plus 18, they'll get close, I think. So I'll take the mids.
All right, let's move to the state of North Carolina. Another rivalry here, and North Carolina State at home, and it can be tough at home against North Carolina. Carolina, the Tar Heels laying 2.5.
Well, Mac Brown says he wants to come back next year. And I thought when they hired him there, this was going to be about a 5-year deal. This is the 5th season, and it looks a lot like last season did. It's been generally a pretty good run for Mac Brown, but Drake May is probably going to leave after this season. And last year down the stretch, North Carolina really had some problems. It's the same sort of thing this year. I mean, they have lost momentum late in the season. The defense has sprung leaks just like it did a year ago. As good as May has been, he has not been able to get North Carolina over the hump. And I am wondering why they're even favored here. Jimmy, North Carolina State, Dave Doran, you talked about an underrated, underappreciated guy. It seems like he's on the hot seat almost every year at North Carolina State. All he does is keep winning, get the Wolfpack Bowl eligible. They've been a real revelation this season, the way they've come around after a pretty flat September. By the way, did you see Brennan Armstrong back in the lineup last week and put up some pretty good numbers finally this season after he'd been in and out of the lineup earlier? When he was at Virginia, he had Robert Anae as his offensive coordinator, had that big year 2 years ago. Anae is back with him this year, so finally it started to click a little bit last week as the Wolfpack won again. I don't think they should be an underdog here, Jimmy. I really don't. They're playing better than North Carolina down the stretch. And back to Mac Brown. I'm not sure everybody on Tobacco Road, the North Carolina people, are that thrilled that Brown says he wants to come back next year. I mean, he's 72 years old. It might be time to hand the reins to someone else. I'm not sure Mac wants to do it. Stay tuned to this situation. There still could be some developments. Remember, when he left Texas at the start, he's like, I'm going to stick around, and then all of a sudden he left. So I'm not sure this is a settled thing at North Carolina. Might be time for him to retire. Whatever.
Yeah,
I'm taking NC State this week.
Brennan Armstrong, I thought was really good at Virginia,
Yeah.
and it was a complete difference when he was in or out of the lineup. And I was surprised he struggled, but we see some of these, especially in the first year. We see a big jump for some players from their first to second year at their new location where they transfer to. But maybe it's just where it's been taken away from him, and he's had difference. Look, Virginia Tech was hot, man. To go to Blacksburg, two TDs with his arm, two TDs with his legs. Yeah, he's a true dual threat. A little hot Brendan Armstrong. I like the pick in NC State to win the game outright against North Carolina. LSU and A&M. So LSU over streak is over. But it took a slow second half to do it. They had 49 at half. It was 35-14 over Georgia State at half. So sailing over. In game was in a low 90s, but they shut it down in the second half, and it fell 4 points short. 70, they ended up with a 74. Looking at a total of 66 with the Jimbo Fisher-less Aggies coming to town.
Yeah, the Elijah Robinson, Texas A&M coming in here. And it wasn't LSU's fault last week. I mean, they put up 56 of their own. We needed Georgia State to do a little bit more last week. Fell just short. But obviously, LSU has the capability. We'll get to Jaden Daniels in a second. What's going on with the A&M here? Is Max Johnson going to be back in the lineup? Not sure. That rib injury's kept him out a couple of weeks, but Henderson hasn't looked all that bad in there for the Aggies, and he gives them at least a little bit more of a running dimension in the pocket. He has used his legs a little bit the last couple of weeks and runs much better than Johnson, so it's a little bit of a different look that the Ags have with him in there. We'll see what happens on Saturday. But this is all about LSU, some revenge from last year, too, by the way, for Brian Kelly, and Jaden Daniels. I think he is right there in the Heisman race right now. Now, maybe Bo Nix and Marvin Harrison Jr., maybe nip and tuck with them right now. Maybe they're a nose ahead. But I'll tell you what, if I was casting a vote, I might go for Daniels here because I don't know, anybody's meant more to a team. His numbers are staggering this year. And, I mean, it didn't always have to be where a team had to be a national title contender to win a Heisman. Plenty of Heisman winners in the past. I mean, nowadays, you hear the guys on the TV heads, they seem to disqualify a guy if he's not on a team playing for the national title right at the end of the season. But LSU's been plenty good. Daniel's numbers are plenty good, and they're getting better. And I think Brian Kelly, this would be really big for LSU to get Daniels that. And I think he'll keep him in there and he'll keep firing. They've got revenge this week. And we've seen LSU games get kind of these ping pong matches. I know A&M's defense is good, but it hasn't seemed to matter in LSU games. They score on everybody. I think this one's going over as well. Anything under 70 is like a go over for me. 66, not high enough with LSU's ability to score points and the ping pong match that may ensue. So LSU, I think, gets its revenge, and I also think it goes over again, and we go to 11-1 to the over this year. That wouldn't be so bad for LSU to go over again.
Jaden Daniels, the only shop is BetRivers. It's the best price you're going to get for him is even money to win the Heisman Trophy right now. At BetRivers, Bo Nix is minus 125, but everywhere else he is minus money. So when you dig into the numbers, historical numbers for Jaden Daniels, putting him up in a tough league. Maybe not as tough as normal, but still a tough league. And so he's got a better statistical season than anybody, that's including Joe Burrow in 2019. A little bit more of a running threat than Max Johnson. Bruce Marshall, you are more of a running threat than Max Johnson. And since you shied away from the big one in the big house, I'll take it. I like Michigan. I think it's a classic a monster sandwich spot here. It's your specialty, Bruce. I mean, that soft schedule for 9 games, and then they go to Penn State with a little added attention and distraction. Then a little sleepy little game in Maryland, 23-3. Let them storm back. They were in trouble. And now here's Ohio State. The Maryland, I'm not going to overreact to the Maryland game last week, but I really like the under. Bo Woody come back. Both teams are unsure of their quarterback right now. We've seen Michigan shut it down. This is going to be a field position game. I'm going with the under as my specialty. So, you want to add something, Bruce?
No, I agree with you there. I just thought that, a lot of people are going to be talking about that game this week, and nobody else is going to talk about Navy and SMU except us. So I thought I'd throw that one in there instead.
There you go. All right. Happy Thanksgiving, Bruce.
Happy
Safe
Thanksgiving
travels.
to you too.
You
Yep.
would drive safely in visiting all those grandchildren over abroad. So for Bruce Marshall and of course our producer Max Gotro, from all of us here at Sports Bettor's Paradise, happy Thanksgiving and good luck this holiday football weekend. For Bruce Marshall with Max Gotro, I'm Jimmy Ott here in the Sports Bettor's Paradise on the BetRivers Network.